brought to you by Staff DNA, the #1 digital marketplace for healthcare careers. Find a job you love today with Staff DNA. How's it going, day ones? Welcome to the first episode of the WISBE Career Advice Podcast. I'm your host, Javier, and today I have the pleasure of introducing you to an amazing director of nursing, Mariah Brown. Here are some clips from the episode ahead.
If you want it enough, you'll do it. If you don't, then you're not ready. But only you will know when you're ready. And so I feel blessed that people I have met have been able to look at me and my character and go, I want you to be on my team. I know it's not forever, but let's do this.
Mariah's journey through healthcare is inspiring. You can tell that she has the fire needed to persevere over the adversities that she's faced.
I am very much this personality where I'm like, no, there's no plan B. This is my plan, and if I fall, we're going to get back up and keep going until plan A is complete. Maybe someone doesn't believe they can be a leader or do anything, and I'm like, no, if I did it, you can. And if someone tells me I can't do it or something happens that stops me, I'm just going to go 10 times harder until it's done. I just think that if you have the passion and the drive, go for it and go places where you're going to grow. Don't go to places that are going to keep you down and you're just another number. Go where you're going to learn, and you have to put yourself, your mental health first. But if you are in a place where you're not thriving or you're treated badly, you are not obligated to stay and be set on fire.
Mariah Brown is a powerhouse in nursing leadership. She's a registered nurse with a master's in executive nursing. Soon she'll be adding doctor to her title as she completes her doctorate in acute care adult gerontology.
And I learned this from my grandparents. The only thing that people can't take away from you is education. Age doesn't define your capability. Because I had students that were 65 in my class that used to be a lawyer, and I have students that are 20. Age doesn't define who you're going to be out there. And also, that test where you got a C isn't going to define the amazing nurse you're going to be when you're on the floor.
As if that wasn't enough, beyond her leadership in healthcare, Mariah is also educating our future generations of healthcare professionals as a professor of nursing at University of Hawaii, Kapiolani Community College.
Really, there's a lot of students that I meet too that are like, I want to do what you're doing. And I go, okay, but my background prior to even becoming a nurse, I was a CNA for years. I was at bedside for years before I got accepted into nursing school.
During the course of our conversation, Mariah and I talked on a lot of different topics, including what to do, what to think when interviewing.
I always tell people, when you're getting interviewed, interview them. Because someone told me that a long time ago. If they're going to throw money at you, there's a reason. I go in confidently, but then I learn at the end of it. Even if I get you were a great applicant, we want to wait till later, I can go, okay, give me feedback. What do I need? And they'll say, Mariah, you need a little bit more of this or this more education. So finding that balance within yourself and knowing your limits, I guess, is kind of the thing I do.
For 14 years, she's been making an impact in the medical field. And for the last 7 years, she's been driving that change in her healthcare organizations from a leadership position.
I'm a teaching director. I'm a teaching leader. So I'm never going to say, oh no, you're brand new. Because I remember being that nurse who so many people said, you're so young. You've got spunk, but you're young. And that is that's my one igniter. That's the one thing that just builds this fire harder and stronger and bigger. I've had a 68-year-old nurse. She's amazing. And she's like, I ain't gonna listen to you. You're not even as old as my grandkid. I was 29 when I first became a director. I was like, I can't do this. It's right during COVID. I haven't seen my kid. I can't do this. And I remember sitting with this 94-year-old man while we were sitting there in the lobby. And I was just crying. I didn't even know he was up. I was just crying. He's like, why are you crying? And he said, listen first to understand, not to respond.
A New Mexico native now in Hawaii, she has dedicated her career to serving seniors from hospice and home health to hospital emergency rooms and cardiac care.
We see each other more than we see our families. A lot of us nurses are working 12s. If you're a director, I work probably more than 50, 60 hours a week. This was before I came to Hawaii. I was 8 months pregnant, and one of our nurses was by herself on the floor with 2 halls, which is over 30-some patients. And any other director in the past has left him. I worked an 8-hour shift, probably longer than 8, and I went home, made spaghetti, came back, and they're like, what are you doing? I said, I cannot leave you here like that. 1, it's unsafe, and 2, you're my team. This isn't just a paycheck. Whether you're doctor of physical therapy, doctor of pharmacy, doctor of nursing practice, medical doctor, you have to have compassion and that emotional intelligence too. That's so huge that I'm continuing to learn every day. And my staff will laugh and go, oh my gosh, here she goes again with emotional intelligence. But my leadership wasn't that I wanted to be up top and everybody, you're beneath me. It was like, hey, you fell? Let me help you. You don't know how to do that? I got you. Look at people and leave the age behind and value them for all they have, the knowledge, the skills, and the drive.
Currently, Mariah is leading a historic initiative in the great state of Hawaii, recently opening the island's first and largest post-acute rehab facility dedicated to serving our veterans. And now a word from our sponsor. Are you ready to take the next step in your healthcare career? Staff DNA is not just the #1 digital marketplace for your healthcare career, it's your gateway to exciting opportunities. With the Staff DNA app, you can effortlessly find nursing, allied, physician, and advanced practice positions nationwide, all tailored to your skills and preferences. Find a job you love today with Staff DNA. The Daniel K. Akaka State Veterans Home on the island of Oahu is 120 beds and currently hiring. Mariah and I discuss what she's looking for at the tail end of our conversation.
I am looking for RNs. I'm looking for LPNs. I am looking for nurses who have skilled nursing and, that background of maybe even med-surg.
Her story is one of passion, perseverance, and purpose. And today, she's here to share her insights and stories with us. Please welcome Mariah Brown. Just going to start off by saying, thank you so much for spending some time with us, Mariah. Would love to start off with your beginnings, your origin story, if you will, and, what inspired you to pursue nursing.
All right. Sounds good. So what inspired me to be a nurse? I grew up, when you're a Hispanic family, you're automatically already taking care of each other all the time. And I feel like when you grow up, you're taking care of your little brothers and sisters or, your cousins. So I've always had that nature. And then my grandparents got older. And as they get older, it's brought upon the kids, the grandkids, all of us to help. So prior to that, though, before my grandma was old with her Parkinson's disease and aging, she was a caregiver. She was a live-in caregiver. So I watched her. I would go sleep at grandma's house and I would watch her take care of these people. And I'd hear the bell in the middle of the night and I would be like, where are you going? She's like, I have to go get him water. Or, hey, I have to go clean him up. I'll be back. Stay in here. So I was just this little girl watching my grandma, walk people around, help them with their walkers, cook for them during the day, and, help them with their medications every morning. And at the time, I just thought this is what moms and grandmas do. They take care of people. And then I started being that mom and big sister who took care of my brothers. And I feel like it's just second nature. As my grandfather got older, he had MS and I ended up taking care of him. Life circumstances happened. He got really sick and I dropped out of school to take care of him and to work so we could have our house and keep our house. And I remember one day we were at a doctor's office and my grandpa and I were sitting there and the doctor said, who is this here with you? Am I allowed to share any information? And he goes, oh yeah, this is my granddaughter. She's going to be a doctor someday. And I was this probably 16-year-old high school dropout sitting there in a muscle shirt and sweats. And I was like, and I paused, but my grandpa looked at me and said, no, I know that's what you're going to be. He's like, you take such great care of me and everybody else. And I always say he planted that seed in me because after he passed away, I applied to nursing school. And don't get me wrong, being a high school dropout, it isn't easy. I got a lot of no's or thank you for applying. Let's try again. Thank you for applying. We appreciate it. But someone else got the seat. But I never gave up. And I initially got accepted into a school in Hobbs, New Mexico, which is not Albuquerque. So it was me and my daughter. And I had to make that choice. Do I go to the UNM Hobbs program and leave my home and my daughter here with my mom helping me? Or do I just say, no, I can't take it. I'll try again later. And I made that executive decision to say, if I want a better future for me and my daughter, I have to go. So I sold that house. I got rid of it. And I drove 6 hours to school every week. I would drive back after my clinicals on Thursday, 6 hours back home to be with my baby, stayed the week with her, like Thursday to Sunday, drove back Monday morning to go to my clinical.
Wow.
So I was just doing this crazy thing, but inevitably somebody drops classes or life happens and they're not in the program anymore. So UNM told me as soon as the seat opens up at home, you can come back home. Well, the seat opened up. I came back home and I finished my dual degree program at Santa Fe Community College and the University of New Mexico. So that college dropout completed school on the dean's list, and I spoke for my graduating class. It was really amazing. It was really amazing.
That's awesome. Kudos to you. That's not many people have. Most people may have not gone that far to take care of that. What was your plan B if it didn't work?
You know what's so funny? People ask me, like, what was your plan B? And I am very much this personality where I'm like, no, there's no plan B. Like, this is my plan. And if I fall, we're going to get back up and keep going until plan A is complete. And that's something I think I'm working on now every day with emotional intelligence and in my leadership role. Someone asked me the other day, well, if the man upstairs took away nursing, what would you be? And I said, I don't know. I don't like that question. And he goes, and that's something I'm learning as a leader. Like, I have to still be Mariah. So plan B was, if I had to like really take a guess, I would probably be a party planner just because I think that's fun. But other than that, this was always plan A. And if someone tells me I can't do it or something happens that stops me, I'm just going to go 10 times harder until it's done.
Hey, that's really great. I mean,
a blessing and a curse, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would assume that throughout your career, and especially at the beginning, after you finished nursing school and you were ready to jump in past the NCLEX, and what was your first role after school?
So before I even became a nurse, I got my worker's permit. And when I started going to like college classes or in nursing school, I became like a med tech. And so you take a state test, so I was working in assisted livings or like tiny group homes. And I can remember to this day, gosh, I hope I'm getting her name right. I think her name is Barbara. And if it's not, I'm sorry. And I will find you in New Mexico and just give you the biggest hug. But she owned Harmony House in Rio Rancho. And she had her bachelor's in nursing. And this was the home that she grew up in. And she made that home into a home for 8 women.
Wow.
And I was so amazed. I think I was 17 at the time because I know I had to get my worker's permit. And I was taking care of women. I was bathing them. I was giving them their medications. I was, making sure their daily activities were completed. And I talked to her one day and she's like, well, I have my bachelor's in nursing and you should do it. And so I watched her end up buying the entire cul-de-sac. She bought everybody else out of their homes and made different homes, one for couples, one for all male. So she was the prime example of like, that's what I needed to do. Like, just to make a change. You can't make a change unless you go for it, right? And she went for it, and she was always something that was so inspiring to me.
That is impressive. You don't hear those stories very often.
No. So I feel like that inspired me, and that's where I started initially. And so right after I graduated with my NCLEX, I said, what do I want to do? Go back to assisted living as a nurse? And I ended up, I love hospice. My grandpa was on hospice before I left because I've been a hospice nurse since 2018, and I've never stopped. Even in my leadership role now, I work 7 days on, 7 days off after hour nurse. And people always say, like, Mariah, you work too much. But that is my hard job. And that still allows me to step away from leadership, but be with my patients one-on-one at night. Mm-hmm. And so that was my first role at Armada Hospice. And I didn't think they would take me. They were like, you're a brand new nurse. No one takes a brand new nurse into the field of home health or hospice because you have to have autonomy and skills. And I was really blessed that someone looked at me and said, you have the heart and leadership to do this. Like, and I will train you.
Wow.
And I said, and I wasn't afraid of it. I was like, let's go. I will learn the CEUs. I will do whatever education I need. And my biggest goal when I go into something I don't know is I always tell people, shape me into what you need for this company or what my patients need. Mm-hmm. And I think that goes a long way for this entire field. Like, it's patient-centered care, right? So you have to adapt. And I tell my students, you are a chameleon. You have to change for different people. No one is a one size fits all. So I was lucky that someone looked at me and said, no, there's something in her. And I went with it running, and I was a mountain nurse, so I know they played me because they were like, oh, and I had to drive really far.
Oh
But
gosh.
but I had the most amazing experiences, and I can say that's where my foundation started, and it just grew from there.
That's amazing. So when you were interviewing for these roles, what do you think set you apart? Because you were, like you said, younger. You didn't have the same experience as other people, as other nurses might have had. What do you think you did in those interviews to really set yourself apart?
I feel like I was just real. I didn't go in there with a piece of paper and say, look, my dean's list says 3.6 and I got an A on this med surg exam. I was real and said, look, I watched a hospice nurse take care of my grandfather, and I will never remember her name, but I will always remember how she made me feel, and I will always remember her face. And I want to be that person. And I said, I don't know how to get there. I know what I know from my NCLEX in nursing school, but teach me and shape me into what my community needs. And especially as a community nurse, it's different in every community. I mean, it's different here in Hawaii versus how it was in New Mexico. So I think they saw that I was real. I wasn't just trying to look for a paycheck. And it's unfortunate. As a professor of nursing, I do hear students say, it's going to be a great paycheck. I want to go just give people Botox. And I was like, what? So that always shocks me. And I tell them straight up, I'm like, if that is all you want to do, this might not be for you. Because you can give somebody Botox, but what if you do it wrong? And then they have the psychosocial issues. What if their face goes numb? What if you've completely changed their life? Like, this is more than just, I'm going to make big bucks giving Botox and lip fillers, and I always tell people that. And there's no shame in that. There are amazing nurses that do an amazing job, but they think about it on another level of like, this will make this person feel happy. The psychosocial thing is they'll build confidence. So I guess where I'm trying to say is I showed them that I was real and that I had the passion and drive to do it. And they were able to go, okay. And I think employers want people that they can shape. Because if you go somewhere and you act like you know it all, they don't want that, because then you're like a wall that they're trying to educate, and that's not good for companies.
But how do you balance? Because there's two pieces to that, in my opinion. You have people that have knowledge. You have to have the knowledge to a certain extent, and then yes, you might want to change, or you might want to be adaptable. But how do you, as a wherever you are in your career, because there are some people that might want to switch within the nursing field, switch settings, and it's not always that easy for everybody. And I don't know if everybody is always as confident to show their real self or to pour their heart out. How would you guide somebody that's trying to balance the mold me to what you want me to be? I also don't have enough experience, because would you say that there has to be a balance with that?
So I feel like it depends. And that sounds funny. I don't feel like there is a balance. I feel like you have to know the companies you're going to, right? I'm not going to go apply for a CNO position that needs 10 years experience for a hospital. I would love to. That's my next goal later on, but I'm not there yet. So I feel like you have to have that understanding too. Like, I never stepped into a role immediately. Yes, I'm confident when I go in, but I'm never going to step into a role where I know I'm going to set myself up for failure. Okay. And I don't want to put myself in a position where I don't want to make things up in an interview. I'm not going to try to sell you me. Like, I want to make sure that I'm going to do you a favor and do myself one as well. So I think there's a lot of students that I meet too that are like, I want to do what you're doing. And I go, okay, but my background prior to even becoming a nurse, I was a CNA for years. I was at bedside for years before I got accepted into nursing school. So I'd already had these amazing nurses who were there, and I was watching and being shaped. I had a luxury that some people don't have. Some people go from stay-at-home mom to went straight to nursing school and tell me I've never touched a patient in my life. So I think it just depends on the person and their life experiences. And I kind of got lucky in the fact that years before, because I have over 15 years of medicine, not all 15 were just nursing. It was I think it's even more than 15, 16, 17 now. Yeah. But before that, I was a CNA, and then I was a phlebotomist, and then I was a medical assistant. So I worked my way up that ladder. And some people don't have that. And that's where you kind of have to find that balance where you say, look, I want to do that, but I have to get there the right way. Just like there's a chain of command in nursing or in whatever job you do, you have to know, like, you have to set yourself up in a position that's going to make you thrive and grow. And I think that's what happens when you go into a position that you want and you really, really want, and you're just not there yet. Because I've done that. I've gone to positions where I'm like, I am qualified for this. And then I go into the interview and I go, absolutely not. I'm not ready for that. They asked me things I did not know. So I go in confidently, but then I learn at the end of it. Even if I get you were a great applicant, we want to wait till later, I can go, okay, give me feedback. Like, what do I need? And they'll say, Mariah, you need a little bit more of this or this more education. So finding that balance within yourself and knowing your limits, I guess, is kind of the thing I do.
That's really good advice. I mean, I think I see too many people that are too overconfident on the opposite end. And to what you went through, I think a lot of the younger generation don't really know if they want to put forth that kind of effort to build a career. It's not a quick type of education straight into workforce, that black and white. It can be a gradual progression, and it should be, because, I mean, in my opinion, getting the real world experience is always far more helpful in landing the job you want, saying that you have experience versus the opposite of not having it. And I know that you're in your position are hiring right now. What do you currently see people doing that, pros and cons or do's and don'ts that you see that could give people some helpful hints?
So I am hiring here for this big, beautiful building, and I'm looking for nurses who have that background of skilled nursing facility, who have that background in a skilled setting, who have worked long-term care. And it's not, and I always tell people I can do interviews for people that just graduated. I am not opposed, and I think they get a little lucky because I'm a professor, but I'm never opposed to somebody who I'm teaching. But if I'm about to open a building, which I just opened this week, and I have state surveyors coming in and VA recognition surveyors, I need somebody who is competent, that if a state surveyor follows them through the entire shift, they're not going to make one mistake. And if they make one because they're human, yes. But I mean, you can't freeze. You have to have that, I want to say, like, experience is what it is. But, like, how some people say intermediate knowledge or advanced knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And I need somebody who goes, oh, I've been through the state survey before. I'm confident. And I'll ask that through an interview. I said, you're a brand new nurse. Like, why do you want to work here? And they say, I want to build skills. And I go, okay. And I say, well, how do you feel about, we're just opening a state surveyor watching you? I don't like that. It'll make me nervous. So automatically, I don't tell them no, but I tell them right now what I'm looking for is somebody who is okay going, it's okay for them to follow me. I'm confident that they're going to watch me walk into that room and provide good care, and that if they ask me a question, I'm going to know the answer. So I am hiring nurses who are adaptable, who want to grow and learn. But besides all the skills, I need people who want to be a part of a positive culture. And that's like the hugest thing for me. You could be the most amazing nurse, 20 years experience, but if you don't have the attitude that's going to bring forth like a positive organizational culture, I don't want you as a part of my team, because one negative ripple can just cause 1,000 negative ripple effects. And that's very important to me when I'm doing an interview. It's not just about your skills. I will meet a nurse who's been a nurse for 35 years, but if the attitude doesn't align with my mission, my value, my goals, and my team's goals, then I can't have it. So I might take that brand new nurse over it who goes, I'm ready. I will learn whatever you need me to. So it really just depends on, like you said, it's not always confidence, but if you're going to tell me you don't want to be watched, then I'm going to say, let's wait until I open up more units, and then we'll bring you on when I can teach you better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's, you have to have confidence in yourself, maybe not overconfidence, but just confidence in your own abilities. As you mentioned earlier, just being true to you and what you can do and what you can't do. And I think the big thing too is I don't tell people no, like just straight no. I'll say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Can I put you here? And when I open my third unit, I'll have seasoned nurses ready to train you, and you can hit the ground there and we can teach you. And I always tell people I'm a teaching
director. I'm a teaching leader. So I'm never going to say, oh no, you're brand new. Because I remember being that nurse who so many people said, you're so young. You've got spunk, but you're young. And that's my one igniter. That's the one thing that just builds this fire harder and stronger and bigger is people telling me, oh, you're so young. And I go, yeah, that's why I started so early. Because I wanted to be where you're at before I got to that age.
Yep.
So that's my biggest thing.
Well, everyone has their motivator, and
Yeah.
if people are going to have people that doubt them, and you can use that as fuel to propel yourself further. So,
yeah, definitely.
So where do you think that you had in your career that you had the biggest growth spurt in learning? What was that role that you had?
My biggest growth spurt, I think, so obviously being home health and hospice, that was where I grew as a nurse because I had nurses who were willing to be with me, next to me, and go, we're going to go do a head-to-toe assessment. We're going to figure out what's going on, and you're not going to have a doctor next to you, so get it together. And you're going to have 20 patients or more a week. And I was like, and again, people have different drives, but I was like, let's go. And so I really was shaped as a nurse, as a home health and hospice nurse, because you're out there by yourself. Sometimes I'm in the mountains, I have no service, and something's going on, and I had to utilize my skills.
Yeah.
Especially when I did on-call nursing. I'm 4 hours away in a place that Lamy, New Mexico. I might be saying that wrong. No, it's Lamy. And I was like, I have no service. I don't know what's going on, but I had to educate myself. And people are different, but if I left a situation I didn't know, I made sure to learn it after. So if I came back to that, like every time I might not know something else, I'm growing from it. So after I felt like, not that I perfected, I don't think you're ever perfecting something. I think you're always shaping it or shining it, whatever it might be. You're never going to know it all. And I always tell people that I do not know it all. I just have a lot of student loans. But I think the one that shaped me the most was I went into Watermark in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they had a director role. And I was the home health nurse, hospice nurse, going in and out. And, the director there at the time, Andrea Denson, was amazing. She's still there. She's amazing. She's a regional now. She was like, are you looking for a job? Like, you're always in here. Like, you're always in here. You know the patients. You're great. Like, your rapport is really great. And I was like, yeah. And I interviewed right there on the spot. I remember I had my uniform on, and she was like, let's do this. And I put my notice in for home health, and I became the director of wellness for the building. And it was right before COVID. And that really shaped me because, one, it was a building where the culture, I feel like every director role, anybody listening to this, you are always the redheaded stepmom that comes in. You are always the new stepmom that nobody loves, and they just had one because there's no retention in those roles. Mm-hmm. So I came into a building that the culture was awful. We had some agency problems. And when I say problems, that's a business problem, right? You don't want to be paying this CNA $700 when your CNAs are working to death for whatever price they're making. Yep. That's a big thing right now. And that shaped me a ton. And then COVID happened. And while I'm building this team up and trying to get them to be on the same team as me, COVID hit, lockdown. People couldn't see their families. And in New Mexico, it was a big thing, right? Because we had to protect not only ourselves, our residents, but the Native American population. And a lot of my staff were Native American. So I was either getting people that were like, we're on your team, we're staying here, or people that were like, I can't go back because I don't want to harm anybody that's where we live on the Pueblo.
Right.
So that shaped me because I was able to utilize leadership skills and say, I found my leadership skill then, and I became a servant leadership. Yes, I have transformational leadership. I have the same goal as the company, and I have the same goal for every one of my team members. I still talk to team members from before COVID who have become some of my best friends, and I've promoted them, or they've gone to different roles, or they've become nurses. It's amazing. I've watched them CNAs all the way up. But the one thing they said is, you brought a culture together, and we were there to stand behind you, and we weren't going to leave. That's so awesome. That shaped me. And we kept COVID out of the building, I believe, for 9 or 10 months. And I remember Andrea told me, never forget that. Never forget to tell people you kept it out of the building that long. She's like, because that's huge. And your team supported you. I had a team member, Dawn, and she's family now. She's not even just a team member. She's family. And she did not leave the building. She lived in the building with me when we had people that were getting sick that couldn't come back to work, and we stayed living in the building. I wasn't with my daughter. My daughter would see me through the window, and she was really
Wow.
little at the time, and that shaped me. And I felt like from there, I grew. I already had a seed that was planted. I became the nurse. But there's always room for growth and education, and they teach you that in nursing school: knowledge, skills, assessment, education. And I just knew, I watched things change in life. We all did. And I said, like, how can I make the difference? And I learned this from my grandparents. The only thing that people can't take away from you is education. They could take away your title, they could take away your job, they could take away everything. They can never take away education. And I told myself, I'm going back to school for my master's. I want to be able to help and continue to grow. And that's kind of where I was shaped. And I started my master's degree there. I finished my master's in executive nurse leadership, and I continue to move up in my field. So that's where it all started. And I had great leadership. Like, don't be wrong, I've been around leadership where I was like, it's, how do I say it? Their missions, their drive, I couldn't stand behind it. And I've left companies because of that. And they tell people that all the time, right? I didn't leave the job, I left the leadership. And
Right.
that's so very true. But I stayed at some great jobs because the leadership was so amazing. And Andrea Denson was one of them. And I remember right before I left, she said, I know what you're doing. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, you fix this and you on to the next project. And I said, well, no, but yeah, that's my goal. Was I've done what I can here. The team is good. And I was always taught a good leader can leave and that will still stand, and they will pass it on to the next person. And I passed it on, and I can't control what happens later. The team stayed together for a long time, but then eventually later on, the team found me again and said, hey, you're a sniff director now? And I said, yeah. They're like, here we come. So they came and they followed, and I got to continue to build great teams as I moved up in my career.
It's almost as if you're the nursing version of a Mary Poppins. You came in, you fixed
Yeah.
it, and then you left. You're like, there's other places that need me now, guys. I have to go. And then
Yeah.
you went off to the next place. That's pretty cool.
Oh,
That's
I feel so honored. Mary Poppins, who would have thought?
so.
No, but that's what it is. Like, I don't, I'm not a leader who's just in there for the title. I'm really not. I mean, people can say you're in leadership because the title or the pay. Let me tell you, taxes are awful. There's nothing I'm getting out of that. But I definitely can say that I was the CNA with bad leadership. I was the nurse with really bad leadership. I used to have leaders as a nurse who would sit at a round table, and I'd watch them make individuals on our team cry and just put
What?
them down. And I was like, and I watched it, and all I thought, and I sat there and I said, can't say anything. And I was young still as a nurse. I was like, I can't say anything. And I would take it, and we'd talk after. I'm like, why do you let her make you cry? And they're like, it's our job. And I promised myself, like, and I know I didn't say it out loud, but in my head, I was like, I would never be a director like this. And so when I moved up, every time I move forward, I tell my staff, I will never ask you to do something I haven't done. And I know what it's like to be on the nurse on the floor by yourself with 27 patients. It's awful. And I've had nurses, and if they're going to watch this, which they will, because I'm sharing this, but they have been on the floor by themselves. And I would work pregnant. This was before I came to Hawaii. I was 8 months pregnant, and one of our nurses was by herself on the floor with 2 halls, which is over 30 some patients. And any other director in the past has left him. I worked an 8-hour shift, probably longer than 8, and I went home, made spaghetti, came back, and they're like, what are you doing? I said, I cannot leave you here like that. 1, it's unsafe, and 2, you're my team. And I have a really great supportive family that understands, 1, I married somebody in this role, and 2, my mom's going to show me that I can do anything. And so, I don't think that I'll do those things forever, but I'm still young enough to do it now, and hopefully shape other leaders and make that difference in other people's life where they're like, oh, I remember Mariah, and I want to be like that.
Absolutely. That's great. And do
Yeah.
you think that, so you have obviously a lot of skills that have been built up over time, and maybe things in you that are intangible that were just there, maybe from, your upbringing, the culture that you grew up around. When you think about people coming into the field of healthcare, what do you think that either nurses or anybody coming into healthcare with CNA, phlebotomist, what do you think that, if you could kind of boil it down to the most important thing to be, I would say, cognizant of, or to be developing in yourself, what would you say that is?
If you are coming into any role in healthcare, I feel like the biggest thing is, there's a few things, but the biggest one is having compassion. This isn't just a paycheck. Whether you're doctor of physical therapy, doctor of pharmacy, doctor of nursing practice, medical doctor, you have to have compassion and that emotional intelligence too. That's so huge that I'm continuing to learn every day. And my staff will laugh and go, "Oh my gosh, here she goes again with emotional intelligence," because we're gonna meet a ton of different individuals, and especially me. I've gone from New Mexico all the way to Hawaii. I'm meeting different cultures, different people of values and backgrounds, and you're gonna be in this role. And I've had the most wonderful patients, the most wonderful, and I've had patients who are just as wonderful, but they have some things going on, and you're the person they're going to take it out on. They're sick. They don't want to be here. I've been hit before. I'm not happy about that. I've been spit on. I've had people yell at me and say, "You're not a good nurse." Like my dad, and they're on hospice. "My dad's dying, and you're awful. You don't care." And you have to sit there and go, you have to have that emotional intelligence and go, "They're not mad at me. This person's sick. This person's son is dying. This person's dad is dying." And because if you don't have that emotional intelligence, this career in medicine will take you out. You will go home and cry. And that's why we have so much burnout. And my biggest thing that I tell my students, besides do everything that you're supposed to safely, or I'm going to get you. I always tell them that I will get your unborn child. And they're like, "Okay, Professor Brown." But I always tell them, like, emotional intelligence is the most important, because this is a thankless job. It really is. You're not going to get a thank you card. You might get a pizza party. That's not the greatest. You might, it's a thankless job. So if you're doing this, do it for the right reasons. Have the heart and the compassion. But also you need that emotional intelligence, because before I was in the role I'm in now, I was a director and I would cry. Like, people would just, "You're doing this wrong. My mom this. Oh, I can't see my mom during COVID. You're going to be the reason this." And I was 29 when I first became a director, and I was just taking it all. And I remember I was like, "I can't do this." I was like, I can't do this. It's right during COVID. I haven't seen my kid. I can't do this." And I remember actually my patient's name, he had the same last name as me, Mr. Brown. And he said, "Mariah," he said, "Mariah, you can't let what people tell you affect you. In 10 years, you're not going to remember. It's not going to matter." He said, "You get worked up, you make yourself cry, you get upset, you take it home." He's all, "It's going to kill you." He told me to listen to the message and not the tone. He said, "Because someone could be angry, but what's the message they're trying to get across?" And I remember sitting with this 94-year-old man while we were sitting there in the lobby, and I was just crying. I didn't even know he was up. And I was just crying. He's like, "Why are you crying?" And he said, "Listen first to understand, not to respond." He said, "You are a director. I'm coming at you. The staff are coming at you. Your bosses are coming at you. Patients' families are coming at you." He's all, if you don't have that emotional intelligence, this career will take you out. And I live by that now. You're going to meet people in your career who, they're going to have attitude for whatever reason. And you're like, "Oh, what did I do this nurse? What did I do this doctor?" And I always tell my staff, people are going to be like that, right? And a thing that I do with every staff I've had, with every team, is I tell them, "Write your problems down on a quick piece of paper." And they go, "Okay." I say, "Now fold it, now put it on the desk." They go, "Okay." And I mix them around. I say, "Now grab a problem." And they grab a problem, and I go, "Read it." And you see people's faces just change, and they're like, "Oh." And I'm like, if anybody wants to keep those problems, keep them or put them back. And you get that one person that's like, "I got my problem still, so I'm going to keep it." And then you have the other people that are like, "Oh my gosh, absolutely not." And they put it back down.
Yeah.
And I say, "Do you see? People are not just nurses or doctors. We are going through real life outside of this. So have compassion for each other." We see each other more than we see our families. A lot of us nurses are working 12s. If you're a director, I work probably more than 50, 60 hours a week.
Wow.
And so, like I said, like, I guess the main thing is having that emotional intelligence, compassion, not just for yourself, but for your patients, for your staff, for your fellow teammates, because we're all going through something. This and that's where you said, like, what would be your plan B? Not only do you need to know your plan B, you need to know who you are before this. And I'm learning that. I admit on this podcast, I am in leadership and it sounds great, but I am still learning who am I outside of this role. And that's if you don't know it, it'll consume you. So I'm still trying to find who is Mariah outside of this role. And I just think that's important to have that emotional intelligence because if you don't, like I said, it'll get very tiresome.
Absolutely. No, and that's really great advice and I would say that when you're just coming out of school or you're just getting into a new career path like healthcare especially where it's so important to have that, it's not easy. You won't have that right out of the gate. And I think it's important for everyone that's hearing this to know that it's a process. I mean, you were able to do it in different categories, I would say, seeing different things and obviously everyone that's just starting out is going to have to start somewhere and start with the process of learning that and experiencing that. When you're starting out a position, outside of emotional intelligence and knowing that everyone has their own problems, everyone's a complex individual, how would you guide somebody just starting out, like in their whether it be a phlebotomist, a CNA, or an RN? What's your advice or mindset that you should have starting out in a brand new job?
So I feel like whenever I have students that come to me or even like staff, I always tell them, why are you doing this? And they're like, well, and I said, not besides the paycheck. Yes, we're human. We need to pay our bills. But why are you doing this? You could be anywhere. Why this? Well, my grandpa was sick, or that's why I'm here. Or here where I work with the veterans, my husband's a veteran. I want to serve the veterans. And my students will tell me, well, I've always wanted to be a NICU nurse. My whole life, my son was a NICU nurse. I said, then you're in the right place.
Nice.
Like if I see that fire light up, then I know you're where you're meant to be. And it's going to be a learning experience because you're brand new. But I've seen so many of my previous students who I've talked to now, they've been nurses for years. Actually, one delivered my baby. And they were like, before I did this, I went into the trauma ICU because I thought that was the coolest thing to be. And I hated it. And it wasn't for me. And the culture was awful. And I said, we're not trying to be cool. We're not trying to have this title. A lot of us nurses like the long titles at the end of our last name. You have to know why you're really doing something because then you're going to love doing it. It's that whole saying, like, if you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. But if you're doing it, I've seen students burn out that do like 5 jobs. They're like, oh, I'm a dialysis and I work here on med surg and I work here on this day. I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, I'm already burnt out and it's year 1.
Dang.
So you have to just really, when you're brand new, know why you're doing it. Because when I've seen brand new nurses actually just graduate recently who went to the NICU and that was their dream job. And they're like, I said, how'd you get the job? And they said, because I told them, like, I was here with my baby. I want to learn this and I want to specialize in this. And a lot of places now, like we talked about earlier, are willing to shape their nurses into that. Because if you get a brand new canvas, oh, great. They're not coming with bad habits. I can shape them right now. So some of these people going to hospitals more say than maybe a SNF are willing to do that. So I feel like if you know what you want to do, go to those places that are educational hospitals, educational facilities that are willing to take you on and shape you, but do it for the right reasons.
And what, on the opposite side of that, when you're just starting out in whatever position it is in healthcare, what would you tell people? Like, just please don't do this. Like, don't do X.
Yeah, don't do this. What do I tell people not to do? I would say the one thing that I tell people not to do is chase the money. And that's huge because I find so many nurses will throw away great opportunities because they're like, oh, I didn't like the paycheck. Oh, it was $3 less. This one pays me $20 more. This agency, they're going to pay me more than if I worked full time at the hospital. But then they come back and they're like, that was awful. Like, I didn't get teaching. I didn't get the experience. A lot of my nurses who go to like a travel agency, and nothing against travel. If you're a travel nurse, you're pretty guaranteed to have that experience. You know what I mean? You're gonna have that experience because that's why they trust. They're gonna send you to every facility.
Yeah.
But we also have those traveling agencies who are like, we just want to get our money and just put you wherever without training. And how many times have I in New Mexico brought in agency nurses and I realized my nurse has no experience, brand new nurses that maybe aren't even from here. They're not from the United States, that were just thrown in a role. So I always tell people, if the paycheck looks good, don't just do that if you're not going to get the education. And I remember nurses that were agency, I actually retained some of them and said, come on my team. I will actually teach you. I'm not just going to throw you into a facility and say, figure it out. But again, like, don't just go where the money's at, because you want to go where they're going to help you grow, because this isn't going to be your forever job. We know that. We know nobody stays everywhere forever. Don't go where the paycheck's at, because they're not going to help you grow. Then you're only hurting yourself.
Yeah.
Money is not all and end all be all. And I get it. People say, well, I have bills to pay. But if anything, my hospice patients have taught me was this. One of my hospice patients years ago, I wasn't even a nurse yet. I was a CNA. And I was a caregiver in their home like my grandma was. I didn't live there, but I would go every day. Their names were Barry and Jerry. And this was, I was probably 17, 18. And, Jerry was a World War II veteran. He was 92 years old. And I remember his wife said, if I knew then what I know now, I would have spent my money. I would have used it, because now when I'm older, I'm buying briefs, I'm buying medications, I'm buying all these things. So the point of her story was, don't ever go somewhere where it's about money, because money doesn't follow you. It goes away. It disappears. It loses its interest. Like, she's like, money isn't what's going to make it better. And she's like, so don't hoard it, but don't run and chase after it and try to save it all, because it goes away. And I see so many nurses are like, I want this because it's a 6-figure job, but then they're unhappy or they're miserable, or they don't realize that gross pay is actually very gross. You're not getting what you think you're getting, and it's awful. So I just feel like, don't chase the money. Do it for the right reasons.
And it sounds like, there's an educational path. So you had in your mind set on either an end goal or an educational steps that you wanted to take. You wanted to learn this, you wanted to learn that. And, like you're saying, regardless of the money, it sounds like you got to know where you want to go, and you got to know whether it's through a mentor or through however it is that you figure it out. You have to know what you don't know, as they say, and go try to fill those gaps educationally or knowledge-wise in each position that you go, and keep building on your skills. Does that seem accurate?
So I feel like any brand new nurse needs to know this. If you're so when you're going for those interviews, one, don't go just for the money. Go and look at these places and say, oh, I have the ability to become a wound nurse here. When I worked at Encompass Home Health, I moved from hospice to home health. And home health told me, we can make you a wound nurse. I was like, really? They're like, yeah, we'll pay tuition reimbursement. I was like, what? And I heard all the benefits. So I went and I learned so much. They sent me to Arizona. I became a wound nurse. I was certified. So I didn't just go because of the paycheck. I heard all the other things. And you should always ask, what are the benefits if I work here? I always tell people, when you're getting interviewed, interview them. Because you want to know if you stand behind these missions and values and goals. I can tell you that I was a part of a company we won't name, but I didn't ask the mission and values and goals. It was right after Watermark. I just saw the paycheck, and I went, because the Watermark was my first director role after COVID, or before COVID and then after. And the next role, they saw how great I did and were like, let's go. And I said, at that paycheck, I'll be gone tomorrow. Went, and I was the saddest, most miserable. It was the hardest year of my life. I can honestly say that, like, I could cry, and I never wanted to be a director ever again after that. I was the only nurse. I was getting this big paycheck, but I was hating waking up to go to work. I didn't ask the questions I should have asked, and I got stuck in a role. And I don't know if other people do this, so don't do this. If you are unhappy, if they don't have the same mission, values, and goals, you don't have to stay where you don't thrive. Don't stay where you are not watered and you don't grow. That is my biggest thing to tell people, because people will use you and abuse you. And I had to learn this because I am loyal to a default. Oh, I signed a contract for a year. Okay, abuse me for a year. No, like, you have to put yourself, your mental health first. But if you are in a place where you're not thriving or you're treated badly, you are not obligated to stay and be set on fire, because you could leave tomorrow. And actually, I learned that out here. Someone was talking to me and said, you could drive right now and get in a car accident. And the company would say, oh, that's awful. And they do a memorial for you. But then the next day they would clean up and they do it again. They just start over, hire somebody in your position, and you'd be forgotten about. But the people around your grave would be your daughter, your husband, your family. And that's who would be hurting. The company is going to remember you for a minute, but years will go past and they'll never know who you were.
Yep.
So that's like the biggest thing. Even I needed to hear now. I'm happy where I'm at, but I'm like, man, if I would have known that years ago, because it's true. Like, people, you could give a 2 weeks notice and they'll let you go right there. And you're like, what? Like, I've been so loyal, but they're on to the next one. So I think people forget that. And I think some people, not everyone, I'm proud of the people that are like, nope, I'm out of here. You treated me badly. Like, great. Kudos to you. But I am, to a default, the person that's like, I signed a contract. I have to stay. So I'm going to see it through. And I've learned you don't have to do that for people that are just going to tear you apart. And because you're helping them build money, you're helping their pockets. I mean, at the end of the day.
Yeah. And it sounds like one of the things that I've also heard, and it's prevalent outside of healthcare as well as inside of healthcare. Sometimes the more money you have, the worse the issue is. And that's why they're offering as much money as they are, because they're not trying to solve a problem. Some organizations, healthcare, not healthcare, they're just going to throw money at the problem, hoping that it goes away, when the problem is far deeper or more, as you're saying, there's a culture problem. There's some other problems there.
So I did some interviews, and in my interviews, one of the jobs was, and I'll say it because I'm not taking it, they're like $198,000. What could that do for me? What could that do for my family? Oh my goodness. But I paused and I went, because someone told me that a long time ago, if they're going to throw money at you, there's a reason. And I was like, you're just jealous, in my head, young Mariah. But now that I'm older, I'm like, no, that is legitimate. There is a reason. And so I asked them, I said, so tell me, why are you having interviews for my role? And they looked at me and they're like, well, our last DON left. I was like, how long ago? Well, about 6 months ago. Why? I don't know that she could handle it. Well, what's the issue in your building? What is the issue that you see that you want me to go in as a director and fix? And they were like, well, we have a really negative culture here. We have nurses that don't want to change what they're doing. We've had really bad surveys. We have a lot of psych issues and not enough support here in this rural area. And I was like, so you just told me you're going to pay me a lot of money to go get gray hair? No. If I don't have the support, and and don't be wrong, I, disgustingly enough, call it a trauma response. I love to go where there's a burning fire and, fix it. But there's some burning fires where I'm just like, I'm not going to die on that hill. And when I asked how many nurses they had in my role in the last year, it is only April, and they've had 4.
Wow.
That's 4. That's 1 a month. And they're like, well, we had 2, we had a predecessor. And I was like, no, I'm okay. Thank you. And they were willing to pay that, fly me down there for the interview, pay for my hotel. And I was like, no. It's sometimes, if it's too good to be true, ask those questions. And then it ended up turning out that a recruiter had reached out to me because my resume was on LinkedIn, and I don't know what I pressed. It went everywhere. So the recruiter reached out to me and was like, Mariah, this is a recruiter. And I was like, it's some spam person trying to steal my credit card. Like, I don't know who this is. It wasn't. It was an actual recruiter. And he had told me, all the places that he was recruiting for. And I said, oh, you're in this area in California. Like, do you know this one? And he said, actually, yeah, I just took their DON from there. He said, that's actually one of the companies that I'm supposed to recruit for, but I don't. He said, because I've lived in that place for 30 years and I wouldn't even go to that hospital.
Wow.
And I said, good to know. And he said, yeah, did they throw $200,000 at you? And I said, actually, yeah. He goes, yeah, there's a reason their nurses don't stay there. He's like, I just got their old DON a new job at a place where she has more continuity and more like just help and assistance. Like there's no assistance out there. I was like, well, thank you for letting me know. So I kind of just, in my brain, I feel like I'm always a concept map girl because of nursing school. But I was like, lots of money, this job, what are all the connectors? And then it just happened that this job connected with a recruiter who then stole the DON, who said that she was unhappy because she had no support. And it kind of just all turns back in circle where I was like, no, the saying, if you're throwing a lot of money, find out why first.
Yep, absolutely. So on a different note, when you're in any environment right now, it's healthcare, not healthcare, this is a time when it's been documented and said that the most generations working under one roof, especially in healthcare, because healthcare providers can have a nice long career. Gen Z, all the way to the boomers, and everything in between. So in the leadership role and being, an individual producer in healthcare and working your way through it, you've seen, you've been the young gun, and then now you're also now the veteran. How do you advise people working in this multi-generational workforce if you're young and you have to work with the older population, or if you're more further along in your career and you have to deal with the younger generations? What's your advice in that scope?
I think, man, I feel, and it doesn't have to just be in nursing, but nursing, they always tell you when you take care of patients, it's patient focused, patient centered exams, because you are different than me and you might be able to eat a burger and it might give me hypertension. You know what I mean?
Right.
So for different generations in one roof. I mean, like you said, I've seen it. I've been the 29-year-old who had a 30-year-old nurse that said, or not even 30. I've had a 68-year-old nurse. She's amazing. And she's like, I ain't going to listen to you. You're not even as old as my grandkid. And I was like, okay. So I had to learn there. But I've also had the younger ones where it's different, right? And I'm teaching them in class and I'm going, when were you born? And they're like, oh, 2005. I was all like, oh, ouch, So to get through all that, I feel like you have to be adaptable and you got to meet people where they're at. People are people. I'm not better than anybody. No one is better than anybody because of age. And people need to get past that. That is the one thing I'm going to say. Age does not define your knowledge, your leadership skills, whatever it is. I find leaders every day, and that is who I hire. So, just so we're clear, if anybody's in the leadership role or looking for it, if you are not a leader who can look at your team who you've hired and find all the leaders on the floor, then what are you doing? And I feel like when I have worked with the older generation, they don't like change, and they'll tell you, I don't want to change. I have done it this way. Why are we going to a new system? This has always worked. Medicine's going to change. We have AI now. We have nursing informatics right now. We use watches to tell us our blood pressure. There's so many things changing. So if you can get to somebody's level and say, hey, I get it, but this is what it's going to be. Let me help you understand it. Let me help you get there. You're an amazing nurse. You've been doing this longer than me, and I trust that you have more skills than me. But let's utilize those skills with what's new, because we can build something great. And then you have your younger ones who are like, oh, it's cool. Let's just text the doctor, and I don't care. And I'm like, no. And you have to teach them, this is the reason why we do it this way. And some of them, I'm not gonna lie, some of them have graduated and they go buck wild, but they come back and go, you're right. Should have calmed down a little. Here, I'm doing this now. And I never say told you so, but I'm like, hey, it's okay. You have to learn. So my older population, get to their level, talk to them, figure out what's going on. And my younger one, guide them. You can send them to water, but you can't make them drink it. But you can be there as a leader and go, you don't need to say I told you so. You say, okay, dust off, let's keep going. And that's how I feel like I am. I'm like, let's keep going. So I just feel like you have to be a chameleon, even in leadership, even in this life now, because age doesn't change anything. I've met a 19-year-old who I looked at and was like, oh, go finish your degrees. You're going to be my boss one day.
Wow.
So I just feel like you have to look at people and leave the age behind and value them for all they have, the knowledge, the skills, and the drive.
So speaking of leadership, we talked about it sporadically throughout our conversation. I think that leadership is, like you're saying, like you always can learn something new. You build off of your prior experiences and you meet people where they are. What are the leadership qualities that you've experienced that helped shape your leadership style?
So my leadership style, as I said before, didn't just come from leaders. In fact, they didn't come from my leadership. You see all the memes online about, oh, my administrator just gives me a box of pizza and never comes out of their office. And it hurts my soul because I'm like, I'm not that leader. And, and I see the posts online. It's funny. I mean, we're a generation with our phone in our hand, right? So when I'm doom scrolling after I'm trying to get my mind off work, I see, yeah, my administrator got us pizza and she sat in her office all day. So I think that my leadership has come from the nurses on the floors. When I was a CNA, one of my nurses, Teresa, I remember she was the most amazing nurse, and we worked at the VA together, and she never was mean to me. She was like, you want to go see this? You want to go see how I do this procedure? Let me teach you this. So when you go to nursing school, and I wasn't even in nursing school yet, I was like, okay. And she goes, let me show you this. She's like, when you're a nurse, do it this way. I had another nurse whose name was Bird, and he would be like, hey, if you ever meet this and you have this issue, do it this way. He's like, they're going to teach you this way in nursing school. That's right. But this is the way in the real world. And I was like, cool. And so my leaders didn't come from the person that was called the case manager of the unit or the administration team. It was from people on the floor who were leaders on their own, and they were the reason units stayed together. The units were who they were. And then, I did meet those great ones who, Dr. Nuttall from the VA, she's been my mentor since my bachelor's. And through my master's degree, she was my mentor. And now through my doctorate, she'll still call me and be like, I haven't had an update. Okay. But those are the leaders that shape me because they care. It wasn't, Dr. Nuttall is the Dr. Nuttall of the VA Raymond G. Murphy. Like, she does not, how many of us work at the hospital? Hundreds. She didn't have to get my phone number and text me and go, are you finishing school? How are your grades? I'm in Hawaii now. I didn't even know she remembered me. And she'll send me like a happy birthday. So those are the great leaders, the leaders that care. To answer that question, it's the people you meet who are leaders on the floor. It's the people who they lead because they want to share that light with other people. They're not afraid to share their light. You meet leaders who are like, this is my light and my money and I don't care. I love the leaders who are like, this is my light and I want to share it with you so you can be bright and shine too. And that's the kind of leadership I try to embody with my team. Is I tell them again, I'm not better than you. I don't know more than you. I'm probably going to learn from you. And one day you're going to work next to me or you'll be my boss one day. And they always laugh, but I'm like, I'm being serious. Or, I'll meet certified med techs who've been working at a job for 10 years and they're burnt out. And I'm like, why aren't you in a leadership role? I don't know. I'm like, you're great at what you do. Let's get you the lead med tech and you can train the staff. And then their whole demeanor changes. And they're like, my badge says lead med tech. And now I train people. And I worked here 10 years and you were the first person to recognize me. That's the kind of leaders that I have met and that I try to be as I continue to grow every day.
And did you always want to be a leader, or did it kind of progress over time? Because to your point, some people, they're never even told that they should be leaders. And then someone comes along and says, hey, have you ever thought about this? And for whatever reason, they haven't.
So I think it's funny. We talked about this in class. I think that they say, are leaders born? I think leaders are born. There's definite leaders. And you have positive leaders and you have ones that are negative. And that is for people to debate, right? And so, but I feel like you can be shaped into a leader, just like I've met the ones that I've shaped. So I grew up, I want to be captain of the team. I want to help. But my leadership wasn't that I wanted to be up top and everybody, you're beneath me. It was like, hey, you fell? Let me help you. You don't know how to do that? I got you. Funny enough, all growing up through elementary school and middle school, I won the class mom award. I went to a private school and I won the class mom award. And I didn't think anything of it now, but when you look at it, when you're going through old boxes, it says given to Mariah Barner at the time for showing exceptional leadership, helping her team, helping her classmates when they're down. And I was like, some are born into it. But I think when I really knew I wanted to be a leader, Yes, I grew up with leaders around me, which was a blessing because I saw really great ones. But when I saw bad ones is when I knew I wanted to be a leader. My grandfather, before he passed away, he was in a nursing home. And um, the nursing home was in Albuquerque. And I remember I would go every day after work at the VA. And one day he was like, I'm freezing. And he was probably 45 pounds soaking wet. And I said, what's wrong? And I pulled the blanket off him, and his blanket was soaked with pee. Wow. And he had a suprapubic cath, that's a catheter on the belly. And I said, what's going on here? And he goes, it was still leaking, so they were tired of changing it, and they put a towel on me to catch the urine. I was so mad. I was probably 23 years old. And I remember so there's been moments, right, in life that shape you. And I said, absolutely not. Who's the director here? 23 years old, who am I asking for the director? Calm down. But that was somebody I loved. Yeah. That is the man who raised me. And I sat with these directors in a care conference meeting, like I do now as a director in care conference meetings. And as a director now, I hear people's complaints, and I never get mad if they're really passionate because that is their loved one. So I sat in there and I said, absolutely not. This is my grandfather. And I don't care if he's Medicaid, private care, private pay. You will not do this. Like, this is unacceptable. You're right. You're right. Well, I wasn't even a nurse yet. I became a nurse, and that same director was my first boss. And I remember I was really mad, and I had told him some nice words. I used whatever emotional intelligence a 23-year-old had. And he looked at me and goes, why do I remember you? And I was waiting. I was like, oh, because I told you off when I was 23. And I was like, I don't know. And he goes, you're going to be great one day. And I said, yeah. And I said, so you don't remember me? And he said, I don't, but your face is familiar. And now that I'm older and I'm a director and he's still a director in his role, I said, you remember me now? He's like, oh, yeah, you were awful. You told me off. And I said, yeah. And we laugh about it, but he goes, but look where you're at now. He's all, you're flying across the country to open up brand new buildings. He's like, you did it. He's like, you did it, kid. And he's on, you're going to make sure that no one treats your grandpa that way and treats anybody's grandpa that way. Here on the island, we call it kapuna. No one will ever treat my kapuna any way other than how their family should be treated. And that's a big thing also when I hire my staff. Why are you doing this? And how do you treat the ones you love? Because if you don't treat them with kindness, this isn't the job for you. And I will coach everybody on my team before I send them out the door. But if I can't coach you up, then we're going to have to coach you out. And that's my biggest thing.
Wow. Well,
so becoming a leader was because of that. I saw things that were bad, even as a CNA, and I knew I couldn't change that unless I went to school. And, because people always say, you can't change that. You're not a nurse yet. You can't change that. You don't have your bachelor's yet. You can't change that. You don't have your master's. And, they hear all these things. And I said, well, I'm going to change that because I'm the doctor now. And that's where I went with that.
That's awesome. And so when you knew that you were in healthcare, you progressed through, how does someone potentially know that they're ready to make that jump into leadership? Because some people might be in their role, like you pointed out, in their role for a long time, and then they don't see it in themselves, you saw it in them, but is there any signs that you think people could identify that when they feel a certain way or see a certain thing or experience a certain thing, that they're ready to move on to the next stage?
So I feel like if you've been in a role forever and you feel content and you're happy, then stay. But I feel like that little hidden gem where you're like, oh, maybe I should be in leadership. Maybe I should do something, is when you see something and you want to change and it's still not changing. If it makes you angry and you're passionate enough to go to my office and say, I don't like this, been like this for this long. I go, okay, let's fix it. Let's change it. Okay. And then you kind of see that spark and they're like, well, I think this should change. And I go, I think you should continue forward. And that's that little sign I tell people. If you see something that you're not okay with, but you're okay sitting through it, you're not ready for leadership. But if you see something that starts that fire in you, you're ready, but only you can walk yourself to the water and drink it. And I think a lot of people hold themselves back because they let their minds play with them. I can't do it. I'm a single mom, I'm this, I'm that. And so many nurses would tell me, I don't know if I could do it, Professor Brown. I'm in nursing school. and it's hard, and I'm a single mom. And I say, I don't want to hear it. I said, I don't want to hear it because I was a single mom. I was a high school dropout. I literally still have the 7 letters I got that said, sorry, you're not accepted into this program. Try again next time.
Wow.
I said, and here I am now teaching in academia and ready to graduate as Dr. Brown in the next year. I said, so I never want to hear someone tell me they can't. If you want it enough, you'll do it. If you don't, then you're not ready. But only you will know when you're ready.
That's good. Yeah, absolutely. So now that you're here in this role as the head of the veterans home in Oahu, what would you say is, your driving force into the future? Because of course you're going to finish up your doctorate, then you're looking to staff up. What do you think is the evolution after that point? Is there something, or what's driving you forward?
So Cherie Wee is my administrator here, and she is like me in so many ways. And I tell her she's my big sister that I never knew I had. She's here from Hawaii, and she's the administrator. So I'm the director of nursing of the whole building. She's the administrator of the building. And she said, I'm going to lose you, aren't I? And I said, what? And she goes, here you are. You just opened this brand new building. You've hired a team, and you took your first 6 veterans. You're going to leave. I said, no. She said, because you're going to go look for the next project. And I said, no. And she goes, no, it's okay. She's like, I see what you're going to do. So you're going to be a doctor, and you're going to make big changes. And so I feel blessed that people I have met have been able to look at me and my character and go, I want you to be on my team. I know it's not forever, but let's do this. And the next step for me, I've thought, do I want to be a chief nursing officer? Do I want to be a regional consultant? Oh, those are great titles and I can help. And so my issue is I have this big toolbox full of tools that I've attained for years, and I want to utilize it and help everything. But now is the time where I go, do I finish school and then just become a doctor and make those changes? Or do I go do regional? And I am that nurse who works 1,000 jobs. And I tell people, don't be Mariah. And they go, why do you do it? And I go, because it's a trauma response and it's working. But I think my next step will be finishing school, teaching at the College of Nursing a little bit more than I do now. And I want to help my vulnerable population. There's so many people, so many shortages, so many rural areas that don't have providers, and they don't come to the hospital until it's too late. There's so many people like my grandpa who are Hispanic, Spanish speaking, only scared to go to the hospital. There's so many people. And I'm like, no, I want to be that provider that builds these relationships, these trusting relationships. You have to have ability to build trust. So I think my next step is focus on where I'm at now, build a great team, fill up this building, and then go be the doctor that you wish your grandpa had. Go be the doctor that you wish you had. Go be the doctor that so many people need and they don't have. And not because doctors are awful. There's such a shortage. They need help. And so I think my next step will be to slow down a little bit, learn who Mariah is, be an amazing mom, and know that when I hit graduation, it's not over. I'm probably going to go for a psych specialty too. You already know you're not going to hear the last of me going to school. But the next step for me, whether it's regional or chief nursing, I think I need to prioritize me now. And I think I say that because anybody watching this, we chase that. And I talked to another nurse the other day that's like, I don't slow down. I chase the next thing and I'm on to the next big project. And I said, yeah, but when do we slow down and look what's around us? And I think Hawaii gives you that moment to pause and go, hey, there's beauty around me. And you'll miss it if you're living in this building. And yes, you can love your staff and you can love your team. But in leadership, you have to love yourself and the people that are there supporting you. And the next step for me will be finishing school in the next year and probably slowing down with 1,000 jobs and being that doctor and being that mom and wife that my partner needs. I think that's the next step. And I say that because I've met a lot of directors who I look up to. And they went, I never saw my kids grow. I was here at this hospital every day.
Yeesh.
Or I missed these soccer games, or I did this. Well, I had the goal when I became a leader. I'm going to do this while all my little ones are little. My little one's just in 6th grade now. So my goal was finish being a doctor before they hit 8th grade. My other one's 2. My other one's 9 months. So I will be done so that now I can give the time to them back that they gave to me while they watched mommy be in school.
That's awesome.
So I think that's important for everybody listening to know. Like, it's great to take these interviews and have these leadership titles and learn, but you got to remember who you are outside of leadership. And whether that's a mom, a dog mom, an auntie, an uncle, you have to live, because my hospice patients taught me one thing: is one life, and you can't go back. And when you I don't want to hit 80 and wish I did something different, or I wish I slowed down. And I can take care of everybody else, but you got to take care of you first.
Absolutely. Oh, that's great. And I wish you the best on that. So if people want to come work with Mariah, what are you currently looking for help with in your building?
I am looking for RNs. I'm looking for LPNs. I am looking for nurses who have skilled nursing and, that background of maybe even med surg. But if you come to me as a new nurse, just be willing to give me a moment to open up my other units. I have 8 units to open, and then I'll bring you on and we could teach you. I want nurses who, something I find that's hard, not just here, but anywhere. A lot of nurses will go, well, we don't do it like this at another building. You're not at that building anymore. So leave what you've learned behind. And when I say behind, in your toolbox, put it in your toolbox next to you, but be ready to learn different things, different leadership. And I'm looking for people who just want to be a part of this positive culture. This is a piece of history. People that live on this island can drive past here and go, I helped open that. And that's what I swear I sold some of my nurses on that. I was like, you want to work here? You'll be the first one. And, but I don't know that I'll be in Hawaii forever, but I'll definitely be able to come visit in the future and go, Mom opened that building. And I'm hoping other nurses want to come here too. CNAs, we need CNAs. And the biggest thing is Ohana Pacific is the company I work for that's running this federally funded building. And they're all about their staff learning and becoming the nurses. They're not just going to leave you there. They're like, you want to keep growing? Let's go. And they want to build leaders here too. And I think that's amazing.
Nice. So what would you say to those that are interested in going from the mainland in the continental United States, making that trip to Hawaii? Because I feel like there's a lot of healthcare professionals that hear about it. They hear about, and I mean, of course, Hawaii is beautiful. Like, why wouldn't you want to go there? But then, of course, you do some Googling and people will dissuade you from making that move. How do you talk to people that are looking to make that move? What advice would you give them on how to maybe frame it in their mind to make the best decision?
So I did it the crazy way. I said, YOLO, sell your house and come with 1 luggage. And my family was like, what? But I had a family that did it. We've learned a lot. The culture is amazing. The people of Hawaii are just beautiful. It's a melting pot here, and I love it. But I will tell people, do your research, and not to dissuade you, but it isn't cheap. My rent's $4,000, and it's not the house I had in New Mexico that was 2,500 square feet for $2,000. It's a house that's 1,300 square feet for $4,000. But you do pay for paradise, and you pay for all the other things going on here with the culture, right? A lot of the homeless population are the people that are from here, and that's very upsetting. So I think when you come here, you have to come with respect. You have to come, and that's not just here; it's anywhere. Research where you're going. I've had jobs that I've applied to in Washington and Chicago. Like, look where you're going. Look at the culture. Look at the values. Look at the community. And I think if you do your research, that's important. I know that some of the vets here, my first weeks here, were like, "Oh, are you island locked yet?" And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Have you driven around the island? You can't go anywhere." And I was like, "Well, I'm a hospice nurse at night and I drive around the island." They're like, "Yeah, drive it a few times and you realize you're stuck." And I was like, "Why would you tell me that?" And so I did it one day and I was like, "Oh my gosh." I was like, I can't go to my favorite reggae concert. I can't even swim across the ocean. And it was so funny. I went out to New Mexico to visit my grandma, and I came back, and how some of the planes like show you act like alive, you flying over.
Yeah.
I didn't research Hawaii, for the record. I just said, YOLO, I'm getting out of the land of entrapment, even though I love it. I said, we're going. And I looked at this map and I looked at the ocean and I was like, wait, where's Hawaii? And I looked and I'm moving the map and I was like, we moved so far. And my husband was like, hello, we were trying to tell you that, but you're the leader in this group, so we just let you go with it. And I was like, sorry guys. And they're like, no, we love it. But definitely just when you're going anywhere, just know the culture, know the people, come out there with respect, but come out there with a positive attitude. I mean, Hawaii has taught me to slow down and to appreciate the small things, because you're not going out here all the time when things are expensive, when eggs are $25.99. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
It taught me how to value my family, value money, and it humbles you a little bit, because we're not going in New Mexico. I could drive to Vegas and go to a concert. Here, you're here. And maybe slowing down means, hey, let's all go to the beach, and sit there with a pizza because we just moved here and we couldn't afford to go out to eat at the Cheesecake Factory, whatever it might be. But just definitely researching where you're going, researching, the price of living. That's important, because a lot of these gigs out there will tell you, like, if you look on Indeed, 190,000, 180,000, 150,000, and a nurse will look at that and go, this is amazing. But look at the price of living. Look at the houses. Because, some of those gigs where I was looking for 199,000, just I was curious, the houses were just as expensive as over here. So why would I leave over here to go over there in the desert, no ocean next to me, So just researching and don't, I'm not saying don't be me, but don't be me. Like, I live a little differently, but I like to say that my journey is a roadmap for other people that have questions, or, I'm always an open book. And if any of my students ever ask, I tell them, and they're like, Professor Brown, you're crazy. I'm like, yeah. They're like, but we're so glad you're here. So it's really just cool that my life experiences or things I've gone through, I can share it. And it could be, maybe someone doesn't believe they can be a leader or do anything. And I'm like, no, if I did it, you can.
Well, all of that is great. I think that people would YOLO as well to go to Hawaii. I think a lot of people have, and
Yes.
then of course, given enough time, they may transition back, or they may stay there forever. The island life is definitely slower, and it gives some people some opportunity to reflect, like you mentioned. What would be your parting words to those that are just starting out in healthcare, to help them make the right decisions in their career?
I would tell them that age doesn't define your capability, because I had students that were 65 in my class that used to be a lawyer, and I have students that are 20. Age doesn't define who you're going to be out there. And also, that test where you got a C isn't going to define the amazing nurse you're going to be when you're on the floor. I just think that if you have the passion and the drive, go for it, and go places where you're going to grow. Don't go to places that are going to keep you down and you're just another number. Go where you're going to learn. And maybe, I've met nurses, they're like, I'm tired, I'm 60, I just want to go here. Then that's fine. But if you're young, and if you went into this because there was a reason, don't forget that reason when you get tired.
That's awesome.
Let that be the reason you reset you, and keep going.
Very nice. All right. Well, Mariah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your stories and your advice. I think it'd be very valuable for anybody that's going to healthcare or is in healthcare. And your story is amazing. Congratulations on all the success.
Thank you.
And on all the future success. And hopefully this will help people, and hopefully will still help the new veterans home on Oahu, and maybe we'll find some new recruits.
Yes, new recruits. This is for our veterans out here that live in Hawaii. So if you have a loved one or a veteran who needs the care, who needs assistance with their daily living, we have a bed for them. So we're ready for them, and I'm ready to bring on new staff. So thank you so much. I appreciate even being a part of this to tell a little bit of my story and burn your ears off. I appreciate it.
No problem. Well, thank you so much, Mariah. All the best, and maybe we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much. Bye.
Bye. Brought to you by Staff DNA, the #1 digital marketplace for healthcare careers. Find a job you love today with Staff DNA.